Good morning, Morai Verabotai, Bruchim Habaim. We are continuing on Masechet Succah, and we are on top of Daf Lamed, Daf Mem Daled, Amud Aleph, 7 lines down from the top of the Amud. This Amud is being learned as a zchut Refuah Shelema of Michael ben Nahid, Rachel Simcha bat Nahid, Rachel bat Edna, Esther Bracha bat Chaya, Avraham ben Tashgol. Today's Amud is also being learned as a zchut for the neshama of Jacqueline bat Avraham. Today's Amud is being dedicated by Shea family, Kohen family, and Dayan family. It should be an ultimate zchut for all the mishpachot. Amen. So we spoke about the 2 first mitzvot that are mentioned in our Mishnah, the mitzvah of lulav, uminav, the arbat minim, that we take every day of Chag Sukkot, and the mitzvah of arava that was in the mikdash. Now, we have clarified so far that both of them in the mikdash, they are all 7 days. The mitzvah of lulav, the arba minim, in the place of the mikdash is all 7 days. In gvulin, outside the area of the mikdash, is 1 day. In the parameters of the mikdash will be all 7 days. What else is all 7 days there? The mitzvah of arava, also midoraita. So we have identical 2 mitzvot that are both midoraita in that area. So asks the Gemara, Amar le Abaye le Rava. Abaye says to Rava, wait a second. We have these 2 quote-unquote identical mitzvot. They're both 7 days echag. But nevertheless, we have a very sharp difference. Whereas we remember how Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai Tiken, after the Churban, he instituted that lulav should be taken in Gvulin all 7 days, Zecher leMikdash. We make a memory of the Mikdash by the fact that we take the lulav all 7 days of Chag Sukkot in Los Angeles, everywhere else in the world. But we never heard of making the Zecher leMikdash for the mitzvah of Arava. What happened with that? If we have 2 mitzvot that are both deoraita, 7 days of Chag Sukkot in the Mikdash, when Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai wanted to make a Zecher leMikdash, why did he choose only the mitzvah of Lulav and left out the mitzvah of Arava? That's the question Abaye asked Rava. So says the Gemara Abaye le Rava, Ma'ishna lulav de'avdinan le shiv'a zecher leMikdash, u'ma'ishna arava de'avdinan le shiv'a zecher leMikdash. What's the difference? Why not? Amale. So Rava tells Abaye, Ho'il ve'adam yotze yedei chovato ve'arava shebelulav. You know why? Because you are taking lulav. One of the 4 species of lulav is arava. So you are taking arava when you're taking lulav. And therefore, you don't have to make a specific zecher for the arava. Obviously, Abaye was no pushover. Abaye says, Chacham, Chazak Baruch, aval, it doesn't make sense. Because that we do because of the mitzvah. Ulkachtem lachem. Ulkachtem lachem, beyom harishon, Pri Etz Adar, Anaf Etz Avot, Var Venachal. That's the mitzvah of lulav. But the mitzvah of arava is a completely different mitzvah. Why don't you make a Zecher leMikdash for that as well? So says the Gemara, Hahu mishum lulavu deka'avidle. Vechitema, and Abaye himself predicts the next answer also says, and don't tell me. If you want to tell me, now you'd pick it up once to say the bracha, and then you pick it up a second time, and then there's arava inside there. So you picked it up twice. Once would be for the mitzvah of lulav, once would be let it be for mitzvah of arava. So says the Gemara, Abaye said he can't say that. We don't do that. We don't put it down and say, okay, now L'Shem Yichud K'Shabar Yichud for mitzvah arava and pick it up again. We don't do that. So therefore, that's not a viable answer either. So Amar Rav Zvid, Mishmet Rava, Rav Tzvi said, let me explain to you. In the name of Rabbi himself, I'll explain to you what's going on here. Lulav deoraita avdinan shiva zecher lemikdash. Arava derabanan lo avdinan shiva zecher lemikdash. You know what the difference is? Very simple. Because lulav is deoraita, we make zecher lemikdash for it. Arava is just the Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan, we don't make zecher lemikdash. Obviously, everyone around the table here is jumping on this. Wait a second, we just spend the whole lifetime explaining that Arava is mitzvah deoraita. So what in the world are you saying? So says the Gemara. Leman, according to who are you saying this? Leman Abba Shaul. If you want to say that this is according to Abba Shaul, if you remember 10 dapim ago, Lamed Dalit, we had this discussion. Says the Gemara, according to Abba Shaul, Ha'amar arve nachal ktiv shtayim. Abba Shaul Darshin, he said when it says arve nachal, plural form, is coming to tell you that there are two mitzvot of Arava. One is as part of Arba Minim, and the second one is a mitzvah in and of itself, a freestanding mitzvah of Arava in the Mikdash. That's how Abba Shaul. So according to that, it's a drasha from the Torah itself. The Torah says Arve Nachal. It's going to tell you it's two different mitzvahs. So for sure it's the Oraita. And even if you want to say according to Chachamim, Il Rabbanan, Hilcheta Gemirina. Chachamim hold that's Halakha Moshe Misinai. And Halakha Moshe Misinai, by the way, we know it's the Oraita. But the Yad Malachi spends a lot of time on explaining that Halakha Moshe Misinai is to be viewed as a Doraita. The Ramban in the Shoresh Bet of the comments he has on Sefer HaMitzvot, he writes the same thing, that Halakha Moshe Misinai is to be dealt with as a Doraita. You see from the simple understanding of this Gemara, is the same. That says the Gemara, according to Rabbanan, Il Rabbanan Hilcheta Gibirira. It's Halakha Moshe Misinai. Da'amar Rav Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Asi said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Nechunya ish bik'at bet Chortan. In the name of Rabbi Nechunya from bik'at bet Chortan, three things: Eser Netiot, Arava v'Nisuch Hamayim, Halakha Moshe Misinai. Those three things are Halakha Moshe Misinai. What are these three things? Eser Netiot, we have perhaps discussed this before. It's a halakha in Hilchot Shvi'it, which means like this. Usually, when you have Shvi'it, the whole 7th year you don't work. Not only that, small young trees that need a lot of tipul, a lot of TLC, those are exception. You could take care of those up until Shnat HaShemitah starts. So those 30 days, you're not dealing with all the other trees, but these ones you could take care of. So therefore, you could be plowing around the trunk of the tree, because that helps it for the coming months to take more water, to oxidate the dirt, the nitrogen goes better. There's a whole chokhmah behind it. So around it you could do, and there's a halakha like this, that if you have a bet se'ah is 50 amot on 50 amot, that's a bet se'ah. And you have eser netiot, you have 10 equally distributed netiot, plantations of these young trees in this bet se'ah, then you could plow the entire bet se'ah, because the roots of these trees are situated in such a way that, because they're equally distributed in this bet se'ah, the entire bet se'ah is being used by the roots of these trees. So therefore, every plowing that you do in any place in this bet se'ah is going to benefit these young trees, and hence, even though the plowing is avodat karka, on Shvi'it you cannot do that, and on 30 days before Shvi'it also you can't do that. But we mentioned that for tzorech of these young trees you could do that, and hence, when you have this eser netiot distributed in bet se'ah, you could do the entire bet se'ah. That's the halakha Moshe Misinai, that 10 in 50. The trees are benefiting from the entire thing. Okay, so that's the one halakha Moshe Misinai. Arava is our sugya, and Nisuch Hamayim is our next sugya, the upcoming sugya, right? But this, that Arava is taken 7 days in the Mikdash, is halakha Moshe Misinai, which is equivalent of the Doraita. So however you slice this, if you go like Abba Shaul, is the Doraita. If you go like Rabbanan, is the Doraita. So what do you mean is the Rabbanan? El Amar Rab Zvid Mishmeh the Rava. We are going to tweak the way this was said. This was not how it was said. Let me tell you how actually Rab Zvid said it in the name of Rava. Lulav de'it le'ikar min haTorah b'gvulin avdina la shiva zecher le'mikdash. Lulav, how many days in the mikdash? 7. How many days outside of the Makom HaMikdash in Gvulin? 1. Right, only B'yom HaRishon. You remember? Ulkachtem B'yom HaRishon, and then Uspachtem Lifnei Hashem Elokechem Shivat Yamim. In Makom HaMikdash Midoraita is 7 days. Outside Makom HaMikdash is only 1 day, the first day. Right? But you have that 1 day, that's Midoraita, in the Gvulin. Arava, how many days is Minatorah in the Mikdash? 7. How many days Minatorah outside the Mikdash?
1.
0. Nothing. So says Rav Zvid, you know what Rava said? Rava said it's very simple. Don't confuse yourself. The reason Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made this decision to leave out Arava and to only include Zecher LeMikdash for Lulav is because Lulav outside of the Beit HaMikdash has a foundation in Chag HaSukkot. There's 1 day that's Midoraita. So once 1 day is Midoraita, he made Zecher LeMikdash to do all 7 days to remember the Mikdash. Because people would be doing it anyways, so it's something that it has a tfisa for making Zecher LeMikdash. But creating a new zach, a new thing that didn't exist before at all, has 0 base. In Gvulin, that's not Zecher LeMikdash. Well, you're going to institute a whole new mitzvah from scratch. That he was not going to do. Very sensible. So says the Gemara. Arava delet la ikar min haTorah b'gvulin lo avdinan shiv'a zecher LeMikdash. Amar Resh Lakish kohanim ba'al levumin nichlasin ben ha'olam v'lamizbeach. Now Resh Lakish, speaking about the mitzvah of Arava, said, you know, even a Baal Mum Kohen could enter even the area of Ben Ulam LeMizbeach to go around the Mizbeach. In order to go around the Mizbeach, you have to go between Ulam and Mizbeach. And he says even a Kohen Baal Mum, who normally would not be allowed to do that, could take his Arava and go around the Mizbeach. Now, a little preface necessary for this is, the area of the Mikdash is not all created equally, right? There are many different levels of Kedusha. Some areas women could enter, and some areas women cannot enter. Some areas Levim could enter. Some areas Levim can't enter. Some areas Yisraelim could enter. Some areas Yisraelim can't enter. And some areas Kohanim could enter that no one else could enter. And some places, even Kohanim are restricted because there's higher Kedusha. So only if you are someone fit for the Avodah of the Mikdash, you could enter. If not, you can't enter. And then obviously there is the Kodesh and the Kodesh Kodashim, and then it's much more restricted. Right? The Kodesh Kodashim, only Kohen Gadol could enter, and only on Yom Kippurim, and so on and so forth, right? Aside from the maintenance and so on. So Ben Ulam LeMizbeach, between the Mizbeach in the west side of the Mizbeach, going towards the Ulam, which includes the Kodesh and Kodesh Kodashim, that tall building in the Beit HaMikdash, that has in it the Kodesh and the Kodesh Kodashim, there is a strip, it has steps going up, obviously, to the Ulam, and between those steps and the Mizbeach, that area, no Kohen that's Pasul for Avodah could go. Cannot. It's a higher level of Kedusha, you can't go. So Resh Lakish says, a Kohen Baal Mum, a blemished Kohen, could go there with his Arava surrounding the Mizbeach. Obviously, when you read this, you'll tell yourself, oh, well, this must be a very important thing that this is pushed away. Now, the Tosafot holds, this is important, it's Machloket in the Mishnayot, Kelim, and so on. What is the level of this Isur? According to the Tosafot, the Isur of a Kohen that's blemished, a Kohen that's not kasher for Avodah, his prohibition of going Ben Ulam LeMizbeach is a Isur Darabanan. It's not midoraita. Midoraita Kohen could go there too, even if they are Baal Mum. Midrabanan you can't. So therefore, when you read this Resh Lakish, you say, well, this must be a mitzvah doraita, and a mitzvah doraita is pushing a Darabanan away. Very, very good, very sensible, right? According to Rambam, this Isur of a Baal Mum going bin Ulam leMizbeach is a Isur doraita. A Kohen that's Baal Mum cannot ever step there. Midoraita you can't. So what's the understanding based on the Rambam of Resh Lakish? Well, we have a concept across Shas called Aseh Doche Lo Taseh. Sometimes a mitzvah Aseh pushes away a Lo Taseh. Again, this is a very wide and deep concept. You know, it's a thread that goes through Shas. So the details of it, not for now, but nevertheless, certainly when you read this Resh Lakish, the indication is that this mitzvah of Arava in the Mikdash is a mitzvah d'oraita. And therefore it's pushing this concept, whether it's the Rabbanan or d'oraita, of a Kohen Baal Mum going between Ulam and Mizbeach. Okay, that's enough for preface. So says the Gemara, his Chavruta, Resh Lakish's Chavruta, the mighty Rabbi Yochanan, says, wait a second, Amar le Rabbi Yochanan, mi amara? Who says? That's another way of saying, I don't agree. Who says this? Versus what? Mi amara? Who says? He himself is the one that said it. If you were paying attention 5 minutes ago, when we mentioned the whole concept of Arava, according to Rabbanan being Halacha Moshe Misinai, who was the chain of command that said that? Ha'ihu amara, Damar Rab Asi. Right? The chain of command is Rab Asi. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Mishum Rab Nechunya ish bikat bet chortan. In the name of the source of this, which is Rab Nechunya, from bikat bet chortan. Eser netiot, arava v'nisuch hamayim, halacha Moshe Misinai. What we just said. These three things are halacha Moshe Misinai. So what do you mean, mi amara? You are the source of Arava being the Oraita, Halacha Moshe Misinai. So obviously that's not what Rabbi Yochanan meant. When he said, who says, that's not what he's not hitting at the core mitzvah of Arava in the Mikdash, but rather, says the Gemara, Ela mi amara benetila tilma bezekifa. Mi amara beba'alei mumin dilma betmimim. Rabbi Yochanan is challenging two premises of Resh Lakish. Says Rabbi Yochanan, obviously, Resh Lakish, when you say this, you are basing yourself on simple preconceived notion assumptions. And two of them are there, which I don't agree with any of them. A, you're assuming that the Kohanim would go around the Mizbeach with the Arava. Who said? We had this machloket before. Maybe they would just stick them in the ground, lay them on. These are tall branches of Arava, as we'll see. And maybe they will just stick them in the ground and lay them on the Mizbeach. Right? So maybe they don't even have to be Benetila. A. B. You're assuming that when it's a mitzvah d'oraita, that automatically it's mutar for a Baal Mum to do. Who said? When Kohanim go around, maybe only Kohanim Temimim, the Kohanim that are kasher for Avodah, are mutar to go, but not a Kohen that's Baal Mum. So because of these two, Rabbi Yochanan says, Mi amara, who said, you are making assumptions here, and your assumptions are not founded and based on real information. I could challenge them. Where do you get this from? Where do you see that the Kohen Baal Mum, who normally is asur, especially according to Rambam, that is a Isur d'oraita to go ben ulam v'mizbeach, all of a sudden it's mutar for him to go there? Because of Arava. Who said? And who said that it's a mitzvah for them to walk with the Arava altogether? Maybe the mitzvah is just the Arava to be around the mizbeach. So says the Gemara, Itmar, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shlomo Levi, Chadamar Arava Yesod Nemim. Let's talk about the mitzvah of Arava. And this is something that somehow or another everyone has heard in their lifetime. This is something we're familiar with. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shlomo Levi, these two Amoraim, they had an argument of what is the essence of the mitzvah of Arava. Chad Amar, one of them, we're gonna discuss who is what later on. One of them said Arava is Yesod Nevi'im. One of them says, no. Arava is minhag Nevi'im. What's the difference? Now we know what Nevi'im means, right? So it has to do something with the Nevi'im, with the prophets. But Yesod Nevi'im means the Nevi'im, and this is Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi, the last generation of Nevi'im who were present in the time of the Babylonian Galut exile, and were present in the beginning era of Bayit Sheni. The Vilna Gaon writes that most of the Rabbanans were instituted in that era. When they were coming back to Yerushalayim, they were coming back to Eretz Yisrael with the new Beit HaMikdash, they instituted several different things to fence and to safeguard the mitzvot that the community should be able to flourish and establish, that they saw what happens in Galut, in lack of that level of connection, when a person does not have safeguards, and therefore they made lots of security safeguards, as the Torah demands we should do, right? Ushmartem et mishmarti asu seyag laTorah, right? So that's the era that this happened, and says the Gemara, this Arava was one of the mitzvot derabanan. But what is the difference between Yesod Nevi'im and Minhag Nevi'im? Yesod Nevi'im means they instituted that everyone must do this. Right? It's a mitzvah miderabanan. They instituted that every single Jew should be doing this. That's Yesod. They founded this mitzvah. Minhag Nevi'im means they did not institute it as an obligation, but they were manhig de'am. They taught people to do that. What's the difference, you would say? Well, the difference would be, to start with, would be a bracha. Would you say bracha on it? Or would you not say bracha on it? If you say it's Yesod Nevi'im, then you would say bracha on it. They instituted it. It's just like any other mitzvah derabanan. La'adlik ner shel Shabbat. That's a mitzvah derabanan. Alet lad yadai. Mitzvah derabanan. You make bracha on it. But if it's minhag Nevi'im, generally speaking, on a minhag we don't make bracha. Right? So one of them, this is Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi and Rabbi Yochanan, the two twin towers of Amoraim over here, says one of them holds that this is Yesod Nevi'im, the other one holds it's Minhag Nevi'im. So it says the Gemara, Tistayem, the Rabbi Yochanan the Amar, Yesod Nevi'im. It makes sense that Rabbi Yochanan is the one that said is Yesod Nevi'im. Why? Damar Rabbi Abahu, Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Abahu said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Arava Yesod Nevi'im. Right? He said, one of his Talmidim said in his name, the Arava is Yesod Nevi'im, so it makes sense that he is the Baal Memra. Says the Gemara, Tistayem. That's a good raya. That's the maskara. Amar le Rabbi Zera Rabbi Abahu. Mi amar Rabbi Yochanan hachi. Rabbi Zera says to Rabbi Abahu, wait a second, Rabbi Yochanan really said that? V'hama Rabbi Yochanan, I find another member of Rabbi Yochanan to stand in contrast with this. And that is when Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Nechunya ish bikat bet Choratan, which we just learned twice in this Amud. Eser netiyot arava besuchamayim halacha Moshe Sinai. Rabbi Yochanan is the one that said that this is arava is halacha Moshe Sinai. So how in the world are you telling me that this is a Yesod Nevi'im? Halacha Moshe Sinai means it's Doraita from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, and Yesod Nevi'im means Nevi'im instituted this. They created this. They instituted this whole mitzvah. So that sounds like a bomb kasha, right? Exactly is that. Ishtomem kish'achada. Right? This is again, Rabbi Zera asking Rabbi Abahu, and Rabbi Abahu was shocked by the question. He's like, wait a second, that's a very good question. And he was quiet for a moment, and then he thought, says, no, that's not a problem. The answer is, ve'amar shchachum ve'chazru ve'isedum. Says, remember, this is Jews going back after 70 plus years of Galut in Bavel, and the general populace had forgotten this mitzvah. It is the Minat Torah. Of course it is. Right? Especially the Mikdash. They didn't have the Mikdash. It's not something like Lulav that you do in Chutz La'aretz as well. As you do it only in Makom HaMikdash. So how are you going to remember that after 70 years? Everyone, not everyone, but most people here were born in Bavel, and the ones not, they were kids when they left after Churban Abayit Rishon. So this was forgotten, and based on the Nevu'ah of the Nevi'im, with that prophecy level, they reinstituted what was originally a halacha leMoshe Sinai. Umi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi. We're never done with this. The Gemara says Rabbi Yochanan really said this. Let's exchange another discussion. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Dilchon Amri Diloni. Said Rabbi Yochanan, well, you mean in Bavel they were so weak in Torah that they would forget such a thing? Rabbi Yochanan is the one that acknowledged that Bnei Bavel are tremendous in Torah. Now, what is the history of this? This has really two pieces of history. Rashi only brings one of them. Rabbi Yochanan is the one in Masechet Brachot of Hey, I think it is. The one there says, "Leman ya'arichun yamecha al ha'adama." The longevity is only in Eretz Yisrael. The Torah is only in Eretz Yisrael. The schut of the Torah, right? Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah udvar Hashem Yerushalayim. Rabbi Yochanan was a very big believer in the tremendous level of Torah that a person by osmosis could be zoche to a certain level of kedusha, which enhances Torah, and so on and so forth, right? So he was, one of his pet peeves was, you're in Eretz Yisrael, you got to be saying Modeh Ani every morning twice, once for Modeh Ani, and the second that you're in Eretz Yisrael, and you have this like osmosis kedusha that you could grow. Until he had an exchange. Well, we mentioned already the Gemara in Masechet Chulin, Kuf Lamed Hey, Zayin. There, Rabbi Yochanan acknowledged that his Rebbe lived in Bavel. Actually, it says, Itli Rav beBavel. My rabbi, my Rebbe lives in Bavel. Who was that? None other than Rav. Right? Rav was considered the Rebbe of Rabbi Yochanan, and he goes on to say how when they were together in the yeshiva of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rav sat in front of him by 17 rows, indicating his greatness. And when he spoke in learning in the middle of the shiur with Rebbe, no other Talmud had a clue what they were talking about, right? So that's the Gemara there. But generally speaking, he felt that, well, Eretz Yisrael is much higher than Bavel, until this story happened with Rav Kahana. And that's codified in Masechet Bava Kama of Kuf Yud Zayin. Mara there says that Rav Kahana had to kill somebody, right? And once he killed somebody, he had to run away from Bavel because the government was after him. The government was after him, so he ran. And prior to him running, he had an advice that Rav, his Rebbe, gave him how to handle Rabbi Yochanan. And we're going to discuss that maybe tomorrow. This is a fascinating story. He comes and he has an exchange with Rabbi Yochanan, and through that exchange, Rabbi Yochanan has a moment of clarity. He says, I always thought that we have got this, but I see now that Bnei Bavel, they're even greater than us in these aspects, and that's where the Gemara is referencing, without referencing, he's mentioning Rabbi Yochanan's memra, but this is one of the most fabulous stories in Shas, which Bezat Hashem will start the shiur with tomorrow morning.